Hello and welcome to another edition of Sutton Impact Family Style. Today I'm Jason and I'm joined by my cousin, Kaley.
Hello.
And Kaley is in LA, like my brother. So we're
Yeah.
bi-coastal once again.
West
Um,
Coast, West Coast.
yes, well, I suppose. You guys do have better water, better beaches, and they don't smell as much like fish as ours do on the East Coast. Although I'm not in the East Coast anymore. I don't know what I'm in. New Orleans, wherever that's
Or
considered. The
the
Gulf,
Bayou.
the Bayou, the Gulf Coast, and New Orleans. All right, so you just got. Did you get a new job or a permanent job? Or not permanent job? I guess jobs aren't really permanent.
So I just got converted from basically being a temporary vendor position to a permanent, until I want to quit type position with Google. So I work for YouTube, doing their original programming, basically all behind the paywall on YouTube Premium. And then I also work with some of their VIP creators. They have a program called Public Figures where they work with Will Smith and Steph Curry and all of the kind of people that are really important to the platform. So I'm doing work on originals and then work on Public Figures.
Okay, now I have a question because I probably watch something on YouTube, like most people in this world, probably at least 1 to 15 to 20 times a day. I see
Yeah.
YouTube Red all the time. I don't subscribe to YouTube Red. I just watch regular, boring old YouTube. How is YouTube Red going right now?
Your first problem is that it's not YouTube Red anymore. That doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, that's good to know.
Now it's YouTube Premium, which is basically the same. They just changed the name because they wanted to avoid being compared to RedTube and what's the other one that's porno site? I don't know.
There's so many. It's
Yeah, but it was definitely not the best name initially, so they changed it to this YouTube Premium to make it a little bit more clear.
And is it growing well? Because like I said, I don't really know anyone that subscribes to it currently. But
So YouTube is global, which I think is an advantage compared to like Hulu, which isn't.
Right.
So I think if you looked at raw subscribers numbers, you would probably think it's quite large. But it's still a super young brand, and it definitely doesn't compare to Netflix or even Amazon. Amazon's kind of a whole different beast though, because so many people subscribe to Amazon Prime and don't even realize that they get Amazon Instant Video.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting. I think we consider Amazon to be a competitor, but I think if you talk to people within Amazon, I don't even know if they would consider themselves to be as competitive as other people think they are, because so few people actually watch Amazon Instant.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a question you're allowed to answer or even can answer at this point, but obviously right now, personally, I subscribe to Netflix, Amazon, and I do like Amazon videos. I mean, I do think they have some really good service and some cool shows like the Romanoffs and Homecoming. Then I also subscribe.
You like the Romanoffs? I feel like the Romanoffs is getting such bad press.
I have Matthew Weiner bias probably. I think that of the 2 episodes I watched, it had moments, and I was hoping that as I continue to watch, there'll be more moments. I mean, Mad Men alone allows me to give him a longer runway than I would with a lot of programming.
Yeah, for sure.
So I subscribe to Hulu, and I technically have an HBO Go code. So, but there's other services that I've seen, and obviously, with YouTube or with Netflix is going to lose Disney, ABC, Friends, NBC, all those sorts of stuff. When that market becomes everybody has their own app, and then all of a sudden you're paying $150 a month, just like it used to be with cable, to have everything. How do you think YouTube will be able to sort of, especially with Apple and some other and Apple obviously has the Jennifer Aniston, whoever else is in their team. I mean, they're going huge with their people. Yeah.
So I have a lot of things I want to say and a few things I can't say, but one thing is that I think YouTube's mission, because it's part of Google, or their strategy is ever shifting. So it's really hard to pin down what YouTube will do. So I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they just saw other streaming platforms were doing and completely shifted their game plan, and then the next year down the road completely shifted again, because that feels like the Google way,
Yeah.
and kind of trickled down the YouTube culture as well. But I think it is like an especially hard time right now because, like you said, Netflix is preparing for the loss of so much of their content. It's like the number one show on Netflix is Friends, so they're going to be really, really screwed unless they have a gigantic library of content that they own the rights to that will keep people subscribing. So right now, it just is incredibly hard to compete with Netflix. I mean, I think, even when I was at Disney and working for Freeform, Netflix is like the elephant in the room of every conversation because they're just eclipsing the spend for both original programming and marketing, and also just changing the game in terms of how you drop shows and how you increase awareness and how you participate in like the cultural zeitgeist that everybody else is just kind of like scrambling to keep up. That being said, I feel like YouTube has some potential advantages that the other platforms don't have. One is that I think like basically young people, like teens, spend as much, if not more, time on YouTube as they do on Netflix. And if young people had to choose, two subscription platforms to keep, it would probably be Netflix and YouTube. If they were only to, watch two streaming services, like it's not going to be HBO Go, it's not going to be Amazon Prime, it's probably not going to be the Disney direct-to-consumer product. So I think with young people, that's where we have like the biggest leg up. And then the other thing is I think like global. I think Google is like data-centric like strategy and like global facing strategy is also setting it up for potential success, whereas like the new platforms like Disney and CBS and I don't know, all of the other platforms don't feel as global right now. So hopefully we can kind of like stick it out and win the streaming war.
Yeah. And I've also noticed like if a show goes over, I mean, I think this is an advantage that YouTube has, and I don't know exactly what gives it this advantage necessarily, but like obviously Logan Paul is, whatever you think of him, but he's done some pretty terrible things. But none of that negativity seems to go towards YouTube, and as the platform that keeps him up. Like if HBO shows something, if it's anti-Semitic, if there's something bad that HBO does, it's put on HBO. HBO's held accountable. Whereas the people on YouTube, I know Logan Paul is still huge on YouTube. Like people still love watching him for whatever reason. And I try to justify it in my mind, thinking like, is he like I love Johnny Knoxville and Bam Margera and all the Jackass stuff. And on my old man corner, I'm like, no, it's so much different. Like that was more clever, and maybe it's not. Maybe he's just the younger generation sort of version of whatever that is. But I mean, I noticed like you guys don't. I mean, YouTube in general, like no matter what happens on YouTube, it's on the creator, and it doesn't seem like there's any blowback towards YouTube itself as to what they're putting up, I guess, as much.
Yeah, I don't know. I think people have different like opinions about that. Like I think, and I don't know, everyone's feelings and strategy and what YouTube is trying to be broadly, but like there is kind of like a conversation around YouTube being like, is it a dumb pipe? Is it just serving you whatever content is on the platform, or does it have like a responsibility to curate in the way that like HBO does? And I think for the past 10 to 15 years that YouTube's existed, it's way far leaned into the dumb pipe side. But I think with like the broader conversation around like fake news, I think that's actually like much bigger threat than like the shitty creators like Logan Paul. And I should have noted this on tap. I don't know how many listeners you have, but I'm not speaking as an official YouTube person, only as
of course
someone that pays attention to the entertainment industry and loves talking to my cousin about pop culture. But I think there's like, the conversation around Facebook and how much hot water Facebook's gotten into with them trying to just claim like we're not responsible for what's on our platform. That I feel like will, I think, have a a bigger impact on all social media sites. And I don't know, YouTube does sit in this weird like middle ground where it's like, is it a entertainment site? Is it a done pipe? Is it a social media network? Like, who knows? So it has kind of like unique challenges, but also like an advantage in that way.
Right. It's also a place where, I mean, you could have, in the midst of all this fake news, you could have real alternative news. Because, I mean, most of the news networks, are owned by, 5 or 6 conglomerates for the most part. So it is nice that, there is a place, like you guys have The Trues with Russell Brand and some other, not fake, like alternative news shows on there, which are really nice. And I think it's a lot of it's on the, I think it's on.
Started on YouTube and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It does feel like, I don't know. There's just so much content on YouTube. It's like hard to even know, and I think I do kind of like have some compassion for social media networks, even though they're gigantic conglomerates run by billionaires, that it does feel like they are in like just an incredibly impossible situation to try to deal with all of their content.
Oh, definitely. And I think I'm always a big person on self, responsibility. I always feel like a lot of the things that people were, they were like, oh, I didn't know that wasn't true. And it's like, well, then you're just kind of an idiot. Like, I mean, you do have the entire internet, and there's all sorts of ways that you can double check things and research things. Like you should never accept anything at face value from anyone, anywhere. Like, I don't think it's YouTube's or Facebook's or anybody's responsibility to make sure that, every idiot on the planet doesn't believe every stupid thing that's up there. I mean, whether it's, a glass of wine is the same thing as going to the gym or something more important. I mean, you've got to do there's got to be some self-responsibility. I mean, there were wars fought over education and books and like the Library of Alexandria. And now everybody literally carries something way more powerful in their hands and nobody can be bothered to do the tiniest bit of research. So I think a lot of that's on the person. And just because I thought about it.
I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know. I feel like that is true, but at the same time, people are so dumb. So I do worry about like the state of democracy, like broader world, safety and prosperity and I don't know, freedom. So I'm worried about some tech companies like entirely abdicating responsibility. But I don't know where they should come down. Thankfully, I don't have to make that decision. I just work on the TV show.
Nice. Well, on a much lighter note, I was thinking about my first memory of YouTube, and I'm obviously older than you, so I probably have a different one. I watched it actually this morning just because I was thinking about it. I know you were coming on the show. We're going to talk a little bit about it. But it was the animated George Washington song.
Oh my God, I don't even know what is this?
It has like 20 million views. It's just a ridiculous, like it's a terribly animated song about George Washington. But it just gets sillier and sillier by the second. I don't know. It at the time it just made me laugh and laugh and laugh. Like at some point he's flying through the sky on an eagle. Like it just, and he killed. I don't know. You have to watch it. I guess we just look up George Washington song on YouTube because I don't want to infringe on their copyright. But that was my first memory of YouTube was that video.
And that was I just looked it up. It's 2009. So that was 9 years ago.
Yeah.
It has 5 million views.
That's it? Okay.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean, I think it's truly astounding, like, how gigantic YouTube is when it's really only been around, like, a little more than 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. But I guess the same thing could be said about Facebook. Yeah. I think my first YouTube memory is watching that Betches song that was like, let's get some shoes. Let's get some shoes. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I remember watching that in our dorm room freshman year and being like, why are we watching this? This is so catchy. I don't know what we're watching. And I don't know, that was like the first like truly like user-generated viral hit too, which is pretty interesting, I think.
Yes. And also it's wonderful to watch like old YouTube videos when, I mean, now it feels like anytime somebody puts something up, there's, even if they're an amateur person that's never done anything before, there's clearly thought process about what are people going to see in this? How does this affect my image, my brand? Whereas like the early days of YouTube was like that awesome, like, you know, people just sort of put themselves out there in the weirdest ways. And I don't really think
Yeah.
we get that nearly as much anymore, just because it's, people are just way more aware. But I love that part of it, where people, would just make a complete idiot of themselves and just, but completely just
Yeah.
like without self awareness. Like I feel like now, like
Yeah.
when they do it, it's like, oh, this is gonna be so funny, this is gonna be so silly. But before, it had much more of a weird, vulnerable quality to it, and I liked it.
Yeah, I think that's like the case for every like new social media platform, because that's how like Vine felt in the beginning too, and then it like became like, oh, now there are Vine stars and they're making $1 million and they're like planning their videos really well, and that's also how it feels like Facebook was. Like, you time hop to the stuff that you were posting on Facebook in the early days, and it's like, oh my god, none of us knew how to use this at all. We were all being so silly and vulnerable, and like, this is what I'm thinking about, and this is who I'm with, and this is what I'm doing. And now I like might post that I got a new job, and that's pretty much it.
Oh yeah.
It's definitely changed a lot.
Very much so. Like, even I don't really care that much about it, but I even think about when I make sure, like, used to I would just, anytime somebody I knew posted something, I would just automatically like it even if I didn't read it. Now I'm like, oh man, I better not, just in case. I was like, now I got to read it and research. I'm like, it's not even worth it.
I know. That's how I feel too.
Well, since we usually talk to my dad, so we have sort of an older generational sort of talk about TV and movies. You showed us this list from Y Pulse, where it's the most popular shows from people 13 to 36, which is a weird age group, but.
Well, it's basically millennials and then Gen Z as far down as you can research online.
And I have heard of every single one of these shows, and I've seen over half of them.
I mean, they're giant shows, right? Like,
yeah.
So let's read the top of the list and react.
So
1 is This Is Us. 2
yes.
is Grey's Anatomy. 3 is Game of Thrones. 4 is The Good Place. 5 is Handmaid's Tale. I'll just keep going till 10 at least.
Okay.
6 is Riverdale. 7 is The Walking Dead. 8 is Stranger Things. 9 is Shameless. And 10 is My Hero Academia.
Yes.
So how many of those have you watched?
I watched number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8.
You have to say them out loud. People don't remember the numbers.
Okay. So I've obviously seen every episode of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
The Good Place is my favorite sitcom on TV right now. I think that show is just amazing.
I see.
Like, I'm a pretty cynical person, and I cried at the last episode. I mean, I teared up the last episode. I don't want to say I cried, but I got a couple tears. And that happens often on that show. Some from laughing, and then some from it just being, I think, just a beautifully written show.
Yeah, it really swings from like highbrow to lowbrow, and like intellectual to just like absolutely silly so quickly, and it makes me so happy. Oh,
it's amazing. And that guy has actually now signed an exclusive deal with Netflix, bringing it back to the beginning.
He is? Michael Schur?
Michael Schur, Shonda Rhimes, and they grabbed somebody else too that is big on TV.
Well, they have Kenya Barris and they have Ryan Murphy. So they have like everybody. But it's so funny that they said that, because I was listening to the podcast The Watch from like 3 weeks ago maybe.
Yeah.
And it's another, like, it's just a TV podcast, and one of their predictions was like, I would keep an eye on Mike Schur, who creates the group Good Place, to see what he does next. So it's really funny that he has just signed a deal with Netflix. Are you sure about that? Did you see this?
I thought I actually saw that listen to The Watch in the last couple of days. As we shout out to The Watch.
I don't think he's, I don't know, maybe he is going to Netflix. I thought NBC Universal was going to keep him like locked up, but maybe not. Oh,
like I said, I thought I heard on The Watch, your show that you just mentioned, which I listened to as well.
I'm a few behind, so it's possible.
Yes.
But that would be a huge coup for Netflix, I feel like, because so many of, like, not on this list, but I feel like so many of the Netflix top shows are often like The Office, which he had a part in.
Right.
I think he like sort of distantly connected to Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and then
Parks and Rec.
And Parks and Rec and The Good Place. So like basically all of the best broadcast comedies.
Well, except for the very best one, he had nothing to do with.
What is the very best one?
Well, I guess technically The Good Place I would say is the very best one, but I think Carmichael's show is the second best one.
Oh, wait, what did you say is the first best one?
I still have to go to Good Place.
Oh.
Yeah. Then the
I
Carmichael
never
Show.
watched the Carmichael Show. I should go back and watch it.
It's unbelievably good. It's so amazing. And it obviously,
Okay.
you know, Lil Ray Howard and Tiffany Haddish and everybody else have really broken out since then. And you have the National
yeah.
Treasure and David Alan Grier, who's just fantastic in everything he does, including Broadway.
I should watch it. I know he's great. The other thing I think is interesting about this list, though, is like, I mean, it is mostly broadcast. This Is Us is broadcast. Grey's Anatomy is broadcast. The Good Place, broadcast. Riverdale, the CW, so that's broadcast. I guess those, like, you know, 4 of the top 10. But then everything else, Game of Thrones is HBO, so that's, you know, premium. Handmaid's Tale is Hulu, also premium. Walking Dead, AMC, which is kind of like, I don't know, not exactly premium, but definitely
it's like it's in that weird.
Stranger Things, Netflix. And then the one we said, My Hero Academia, that's an anime show that I have never even really heard of before. Do you know that show?
I do. I actually have a soft spot for anime.
What is that show about? Do you like it?
That's not one of my favorite. My favorite is, I think right now, I'd say my favorite is Attack on Titan, and I'm very much looking forward to season 3 coming out. They're actually making a live-action Attack on Titan movie in America now, and John Boyega is a huge fan, and he's been dying to be in it. So I think more people will find it.
I'm sure they will allow him a role.
Yes, so I think that'll become much more popular as it becomes in English and in American. This is the case for a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because with number 9,
pretty astounding.
What's that?
It is pretty astounding that like an anime show is like this high on a list of like absolute favorite TV shows. That I mean, it obviously is. This is U.S. based only, so it is like breaking through, even though it's like not American made. I think it's cool.
Right. And with number 9, I've only seen the British Shameless. I've never seen the American, and I'm assuming that's the American one that's part of the top 10.
Definitely. I didn't even know there was a British Shameless.
The original is British, obviously, because it's good.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't know. And I think the weird part about Grey's Anatomy, these are young people, and they're saying Grey's Anatomy. And Grey's Anatomy, I think, is on its 17th season. And it still continues to top all of our rankers and all of our favorite TV shows. And I feel like I watched the first 5 seasons and was done, but people have really hung in, and I think they've done a really good job of introducing a new generation of characters and storylines to keep it fresh. That has enabled it to go on for 15, 16, 17 seasons, whatever it's in right now.
People love hospital shows.
They do. That's true. And I mean, it's a primetime soap, but still, that's in this day and age, it's really absurd to have a show on for that long. Most of these other shows are in their, between first and third season, which I just think speaks to how fast the zeitgeist moves on from a show. You get 1 or 2 seasons, maybe 3, and then people are moving on to the next thing.
Unless you're the rare Game of Thrones show.
Right, which is a force of nature. That's pretty much an anomaly.
Yes. Now, the one thing and this is just me making something up with no actual research, just so people are aware, as I tend to do in real life too. I think if you extended this list to 56 or 66 from 13, I think the crazy thing is a lot of these shows would still be on the list. This Is Us, Grey's Anatomy, Game of Thrones, probably Good Place, Handmaid's Tale, probably not Riverdale, maybe Walking Dead, probably Shameless. I mean, and I thought it's weird about music right now too, because it feels like when you research the history of music, there's always been a great divide between this is young people's music and this is the old people's music. And it seems like we bizarrely reached a place where everybody well, I don't. Obviously, I'm going to make that very clear. But it seems like old people like Cardi B and young people, it's it seems like there's no distinction anymore.
I don't know. I don't agree. I feel
I mean, mumble rap is just terrible no matter what. Nobody should like that, young or old.
I disagree though, because I feel like there's like, I would be very surprised if like my mom, who's 60 something, looks 40 if she hears this, like Cardi B, and she might like her, the song that's
right, the song, right.
Radio, but like, I don't know. I wouldn't think that if she like.
But I think it's really closer than it's ever been for some reason.
Like, she would be a fan.
It does feel like it's closer. The gap is closer than it's ever been. Like, I think before they would just I mean, well, maybe I'm basing this off old movies, but they would chastise the music. Like, how can you listen to that crap and stuff like that? Where now people are just bumping it in there. I mean, I see it all the time.
Yeah.
Like, in real life.
I don't know, I'm just thinking back to the Thanksgiving dinner we had with my family-in-law, and me and my soon-to-be sister-in-law, Mel, were like throwing down against my mother-in-law about her total ambivalence towards Beyonce, where she was just saying, I just don't think she's very talented. And we were like, absolutely not.
Do you want to hear a hot Beyonce take from your cousin?
Yeah.
I don't think she is either. She doesn't.
Truly outrageous.
She doesn't write. I mean, she doesn't write any music. She doesn't write any lyrics. Like, she's a performer, but people act like it's her music, and she's this. I mean, like, it's just bizarre. Like, she's a performer.
Okay, so
you could plug anybody into that role, and they could sing those songs because she doesn't write them.
What about Whitney Houston?
I mean, they're both talented performers with great voices, but I mean, they're.
So they have talent, because you just described them as talented.
I don't think she's as talented. I mean, they call her the queen, like a queen, which is just. I mean, that's a bizarre thing in general, American or British, to have a queen. But to pretend like she's like this second coming of some kind of like, she's a talented performer, but she also has auto-tune and 70 producers on every album and all the best songwriters. Like,
Yeah, but I mean,
if you stuck her in a studio with no songs, she would come out with no songs. Like,
that's not true. That's not true. First of all, she does have. I know. I agree with you that she always, has like 5 different writers on her albums. But even like them, like the songwriters will attribute a lot of the improvisation that takes the song to the next level.
Well, you're part of the industry. No, because it's it's that bullshit in for a word, in for a third that the industry created. And they did this back in like the 50s too for egotistical song performers. Once they start getting crap, like when she lost the Grammy to Beck, and they pointed out that Beck had one producer and one songwriter, and it was him, and she had 50. She started getting that in for a word, in for a third. So if she changes an oot to an ah, all of a sudden they put her name as a credit. And obviously, if you're working with Beyonce and she's the industry that she is, it's not like you can not sing her praises and be like, yes, but she brings my songs to life because you want her to keep, coming back to you because she's, that powerful in the industry. But, and again, not saying she's not a talented performer, but we need to just bring her back down to a level that's realistic. Like, even though I don't enjoy.
First of all, I think she's an incredible performer. She's an incredible singer, and she makes great music. So she obviously has like a sense of taste. Like, I don't think. I mean, she has made consistently great music, regardless of who her agent is and who her.
But she doesn't make
her
music. She doesn't make anything. She performs it. She doesn't make great music. She performs other people's wonderful music.
This is outrageous. If we weren't on record, I would hang up on you right now. But as it is, I feel like we should move on.
Now, on the other spectrum, like, I don't like Lady Gaga, but I think she's incredibly talented, and she's a real creative person. So.
Okay. Matt would disagree with you, my brother. He hates Lady Gaga. But
well, again, I'm not saying she's enjoyable, but she's she clearly.
To the point, I disagree with your original premise that pop music is for everyone. I mean, pop music is for everyone, but I think still there are people that are huge pop music icons that are very polarizing, and that older people can't hop on board with.
I suppose, but I think it's less and less. I think that gap is bizarrely getting less and less, and I don't know why that is. Maybe old people just want to seem cool, but
or maybe pop culture is just getting more. I more universal. Although that's not really true because it's also getting more niche. So I don't know.
I know, it's bizarrely both. Yeah. So we both agree, Beyonce, Just kidding. I know, you love Beyonce, she's great.
I love her. I mean, I'm not like, I don't go to every concert or anything, but I did see her Lemonade tour, and I thought it was incredibly phenomenal. And, she just has insane stamina and insane talent, both in dancing and performing and singing and putting an incredible show together that feels truly remarkable.
And speaking as someone who's read like every book on the music industry ever too, if you follow Beyonce's career, speaking of Lemonade, every time she gets to the point where it's too much Queen Bee, and she's too far above, she releases something like Lemonade, which puts her back down into a human play. It's a different playbook, but they've been running that playbook for years, along with, teenage star, crazy star, classy star. Whether you're talking, I mean, there's just playbooks that they run in the music industry. Like everything it's really depressing when you actually know how the sausage is made in that industry. But, her in particular, that's another playbook they run. Whereas if anytime you become too much above the people, you write an out, they put out an album like Lemonade where she's been cheated on and she's back to being just like you. And not to say that I'm sure Jay-Z does cheat on her because he's Jay-Z. He can. But
no, he can't. She's Beyonce, and also they're married.
Yes.
Not okay.
No, definitely not.
All right. Well, next topic.
Well, of these shows on this list, how many did you watch of the top 10 outside of My Hero Academia?
I mean, pretty much all of them. I am more of a shallow watcher than a deep watcher. So when a show gets past like season 3, I said that everyone does this, but I mean, I'm really speaking from my own personality. Is that I get bored of stories, so I like to move on, and I like to see what other people are talking about. So, once This Is Us became a gigantic hit, I wanted to check it out. So I watched This Is Us. I think I watched the first few seasons of Grey's, read the books, and watched all of the episodes of Game of Thrones. The Good Place, I've been, #1 fan evangelist for the entire time, and would follow Mike for sure to the ends of the earth.
Yes.
Handmaid's Tale, I've watched. Riverdale, I watched season 1, and then heard season 2 was bad, so I dropped off. The Walking Dead, my husband watches, but it's too scary for me, so I don't watch. Stranger Things, I've watched. Shameless, I've watched only 1 season. My Hero Academia, literally never heard of it before this month.
But now you're going to have to watch it.
I don't know, I'm going to pass. I haven't watched anime since, Dragon Ball Z, and I don't think that was even anime. Is that anime?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we'll call it anime. Yeah, I'm sure somebody will complain, but nobody listens to this show, so it's fine.
And the other few, I've watched all of them except The Flash. So, yeah, I mean, it's my job to watch TV, but it's also, my #1 passion. So, I've watched a lot of TV.
And I would say of all the shows that I watched, only The Good Place and The Game of Thrones are the only ones I watch in a traditional watching way, where I watch them the week they come on each week. I mean, Game of Thrones because you kind of have to because of spoilers, and Good Place because with Hulu, I would love if they just dumped all the episodes, but because I just can't wait to watch the next one. But I just can't not watch. The second Friday morning rolls around, I'm at work, and I'll just watch that episode. My bosses don't care, so it's fine.
Handmaid's Tale, the first season, they did that weird release cadence where they dropped the first 3 and then they did week to week, which I think is really brilliant.
Yeah.
Because it got you hooked, and then it made you continue to pay for your Hulu subscription. It was the smartest thing they ever did. So I think the first season I did watch like that. I watched the first 3 and then I watched as it rolled out. But yeah, most of these I watch as they binge. Riverdale is another interesting one because Riverdale season 1 was relatively fine, had fine ratings, and then they put it on Netflix in the off season CW and Netflix have like a really close relationship where the stuff that's on CW goes to Netflix incredibly quickly, and it just has bonkers ratings for Netflix, even though they don't disclose them. And then once it came back to season 2, it had like almost double the ratings as season 1. So it was like definitely a good strategy to binge release it on Netflix, and then that kind of translated into people watching it week to week, which is what the traditional broadcasters want.
Yeah, because like Holly and I watched that. I don't know, like late night. You're kind of both tired, so you just throw something on TV, and we felt like something, whatever that would be considered. So we watched the first season, but
it's like campy. It's like
yeah,
silly. It's just kind of fun.
So we watched the first season, but like again, it didn't hook us enough because if there had been all the seasons on Netflix, we probably would have just eventually watched them all. But because it went away, we kind of just forgot about it.
Yeah. And I mean, season 2 suffered a lot, even though, as you said, it had gigantic ratings. Like, the critical response to it was not good. So I think, even though it had, like, really huge ratings in the beginning, it felt to me like it dropped off a little bit. I'm not sure if the ratings actually reflected that. But I do think that, like, your momentum matters, and that's, like, if the critics and the people that watch it in the beginning say, oh, season 2 isn't as good, that can really, like, hurt your momentum.
Yeah, but I mean, critically, bringing back Matthew Werner for Wiener from the beginning of the podcast, like, I remember I always got frustrated because I thought that was just such a great show. Critics loved it, but it would get destroyed in the ratings by reruns of the Kardashian show. So critically speaking, yeah, like people don't seem to care what critics. There's almost like a contingent of people that almost feel like the critics are like some sort of elite group of people that don't like whatever they like, so they hate them.
That's very true. I think that's the majority of people. I mean, yeah, I think like the majority of people don't even watch as much scripted programming. I watch almost no unscripted programming, but because I like crafted narratives and stories and
right.
Like, beautiful settings and costumes and things. But like when you look at the the top ratings of things, it's first of all sports, and then it's like America's Got Talent and MasterChef and unscripted like competition shows and things like that, and then the kind of Kardashian, Bravo, VH1 kind of reality shows. It's not the Bad Bets of the Americans of the world that are like the critical darling.
Yeah, like I'm always shocked when it
pretty much only on Emmy Gold.
Yeah, like when you go to like iTunes and you look at the top 10 episodes downloaded every week, and like 4 of them are housewives, you're like, really? Like,
yeah.
Not only do you want to watch this, but you're willing to pay for it to make sure you get the newest episode, like on iTunes?
Yeah, you didn't just stumble upon it. You actually like went to iTunes and clicked multiple buttons to download it. That's sweet.
You went out of your way. And again, to be fair, as somebody that works in TV, I guess we both kind of do. That's scripted. It's just poorly scripted television, but it is scripted.
I mean, yeah, for sure. But it's still considered the unscripted reality bucket.
Right.
Lightly acted.
And we all know technically the only acceptable competition show is the Great British Baking Show.
I was just going to say that if you didn't say Great British Baking Show, which what does that mean for people that care about prestige TV, that we all only make an unscripted competition exception for Great British Baking Show?
Yeah.
So I don't know. We're shitting on the people that watch Kardashians, but we're all conformists to our prestige TV as well.
Exactly.
We're no better than the people that watch Young Sheldon.
No, I suppose not. And shows like the show that I work on, obviously give me money and keep me employed. So good for them.
For sure. Thank you.
I'm glad that people watch it. And I tell people that when they see me on the streets in my, my little security badge that I forget to take off. I'm like, oh yeah, thanks for watching.
I mean, yeah, it's you work for a broadcast show. Like the amount of eyeballs that see that compared to something like The Americans, which is both prestige and like on a premium cable network, is just magnitudes larger.
Oh yeah, it's not even close. But
Yeah.
Actually, we have a good transition. You wrote down horror on TV, and did you watch The Haunting of Hill House?
Okay, so no, I'm going to be bad at this topic, even though I know that it's probably your favorite topic. I didn't watch The Haunting of Hill House because I'm so scared of everything. I feel like Stranger Things is as hard into horror as I can go, and you probably wouldn't even think that that's like close to being horrifying.
Well,
Right.
I recommend it, and I know our moms started this show together. They started watching The Haunting of Hill House together when they were at the beach last week.
Yeah, yeah.
And
But my mom said it's too scary for me. So if my mom says it's too scary, I can't watch it.
well, I've never actually seen the show that it gets compared to, but you know what the meme about it is, right?
What?
It's This Is Us with ghosts.
Oh, all right.
And it's probably the least horror show. I mean, there's a couple of legitimately scary. I mean, it's a really well shot, well done show, so there's some very legitimately scary moments.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a deep psychological. Like each of the children represent one of the stages of grief, and it's actually kind of a bizarrely. I mean, I'm still waiting for other people that I know to finish it so I can sort of talk out my few questions about the ending. But
Mm-hmm.
it's very much like a show about getting through grief and families coming together. So it's really not horror.
All right, well, maybe I'll give it a try. But even families getting through grief, that doesn't sound like a super fun time either.
No, it's not. There's every episode has like it flashes back in time to two timelines and to other events in their lives. So you get probably a third of every episode is sort of like a happy moment that you can assume will eventually be ripped away from people, but you do get like a nice happy moment.
All right, I'll give it a shot and maybe we can talk about it again.
Yeah, it's
But I did just watch the first 3 episodes of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina on Netflix, which I think was probably the most highly anticipated show of at least the last few months. I'm not sure if it was probably only second to like The Conners on ABC as like most anticipated fall TV. And
Yeah.
I found it to be incredibly disappointing.
Oh,
Have you watched?
I have not. I know Holly started, and she said she's kind of into. I mean, she's watched 2 episodes, so. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I was like, the first episode was like, okay. It was like, okay, Karen Shipka is great. She plays Sabrina. Like, she, comes from the Mad Men world, and she's compelling and kind of like borders good and evil, which I think is like good for that role. But it's just incredibly plotting, and that was like 55 minutes. I don't like anything longer than 44 minutes. But you can really tell that they're like just, I think, way too bloated, and I think they just didn't quite get the tone right, and I'm very sad because I think it had the potential to be as big as American Horror Story or as big as Stranger Things, and I think like that was definitely Netflix's hope, just based
oh
on
yeah,
the goodwill that it had coming in from people loving the original Sabrina and people loving Riverdale, which is the spinoff of, and people being super into Stranger Things. So I'm guessing that they're probably, I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll have huge ratings and I'll be wrong, but it seems like kind of a disappointment to me.
yeah. I watch more horror movies than I do horror TV. Like I've seen 2
And
seasons.
I don't,
Yeah,
I
like
don't think Sabrina's even supposed to be like horror, but it's
Right.
like supposed to have like some jump scares and like some of the like occult stuff that like Stranger Things. I mean, Stranger Things isn't really occult, but it's like kind of like dark, kind of scary monster vibe.
yeah, sort of like Supernatural and Vampire Diaries and Originals and
Yeah,
Legends or whatever that new one
a
is.
little more satanic, kind of like Wiccan kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like it is fun stuff, and maybe they just like kind of lost that it should also still be fun and like kind of funny. Which I don't know. I feel like Stranger Things has like genuinely funny moments that Sabrina feels like it's missing.
Well, one of my secret favorite shows that I'll share with the audience right now is in sort of that category. Have you watched iZombie?
Oh no, but I mean it was always on lists of like best shows and really enjoyable. And it's like creators of Veronica Mars, right?
Yeah, like, it's basically Veronica Mars with zombies, and I love Veronica Mars. So it was a very easy transition. Like, I'm so excited that Hulu's bringing back Veronica Mars for like 6 episodes.
Yeah.
Like, that's
I
very.
have never seen Veronica Mars, and I really want to because I know everybody loves it so much, and I'm just waiting for it to actually be available on Hulu before like the new season drops, so that I can catch up.
Yes. But I would say that iZombie, as far as like, I mean, obviously it's a show with zombies, it's in the title, but they do an excellent job of like, I mean, it's Rob Thomas in general. Same with Veronica Mars. Like, he can create intrigue and like, good drama and mystery, but he does a great job with the humor aspect and keeping it sort of in just an excellent pacing and flow. So, if you have a chance, watch iZombie because it's awesome. It only has 1 season left too, so you're not even committing to that long. I think it's only going to be 5 total seasons, or maybe 4. So it's like The Wire, kind of.
Just more zombie-filled Wire.
Just more zombie-filled Wire, yeah. But it's the same prestige level, so.
I know you watch like way more horror than me. Do you watch it like seasonally, or do you watch it year-round as much horror as you can get?
I would say, I mean, this particular October, I watched a ton of horror, but I typically watch it sprinkled in throughout my year, I would say. If like something like Heredity comes out, which is probably the 2nd or 3rd best movie of the year, and Toni Collette should win the Oscar for Best Actress, because that's real acting. You should watch it. She's phenomenal in it. But if it's prestige horror, I'm obviously going to go out of my way to watch it. But
it does feel like this year, especially since Stranger Things has become such a phenomenon, like there's so much more horror content dropped this month than I think I've ever seen before.
Yeah, well, I also feel like, and this is based on just social media in general, but it seems like Halloween has become everybody's favorite holiday more and more every single year.
That's true.
As well. I don't know exactly what it... I feel like that's true.
I agree.
Because I remember, I mean, obviously as a kid, Halloween's awesome, but now it seems like every adult is also like, Halloween's the best holiday. And I'm like, okay, cool.
I agree. On Wednesday, on actual Halloween, I went to the My Favorite Murder podcast live show in LA, and it was at the Microsoft Theater, like right by the Staples Center, and it's like 7,000 seat theater that was sold out, and they had like this huge, amazing live show where everybody was like dressed in really awesome like costumes. They were all, the twins from The Shining and serial killers and just a lot of like horrifying, amazing things. You would have loved it.
It's very cool. I will say, like, working on the show, we obviously have, an entire department of hair, makeup, everything else. Like, those people just put everybody's costume. It's not even fair at this point, really.
What did they come as?
One of the funniest costumes was it was Marilyn Manson, but it was Marilyn Monroe mixed with Charles Manson. So he had like the beard and the, he just put an X on his forehead, obviously, instead of the terrible symbol. But he looked like a crazy person in a white dress. And then I saw it online first, but somebody else did Edgar Allan Poe. So it was Edgar Allan Poe in like a little tiny, like weird Victorian dress with a raven on her shoulder.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love whatever. I guess those are pun costumes, or what are those? I don't know. Whatever that costume is, are fantastic.
Those are always the best.
And then some other ones where it was just, intricately designed and just, there was actually a ton of Purge costumes this year. People were weighing in on the Purge.
Like with the mask and like that or something?
Yeah, because I think they sell those masks, like the little glow up, little like, smiley ones or the kiss me ones. I think they're pretty easy to get. And that's then you just walk around with like a fake knife and you're a Purge person. So it's like it's topical, but it's also like super easy. So it's nice.
It's scary though. Like we were walking around this, downtown LA, and there's like people that look incredibly bloody and violent. And Michael was saying like this would definitely be the night to commit a grievous crime because you would definitely get away with it. And thankfully, it could be the Purge. And then we woke up the next morning to see that of the guy in a Michael Myers mask actually like stabbed two people in New York City or something. So I don't know. It does feel like we're like in a gruesome time, and Halloween has gotten even more like intense and more gruesome as people get like more into makeup culture and like DIY tutorials of really amazing, disgusting FX makeup on YouTube.
Very much so. That's actually the plot of The Body, the Hulu original Halloween movie.
The Body?
Yeah, it's a hitman who murders somebody and then he's dragging like the bloody body throughout the city. And everyone thinks he's just got the coolest costume ever.
Yeah, you can just get away with anything if you time it right and do it on Halloween.
But yeah, I guess you can. It's pretty sad.
The Purge people knew what they were doing.
Well, since we've already gone way over half an hour, we'll just wrap up with,
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of pop culture recommendation for people currently? Be it music, TV, movie?
I don't know. I feel like, Big Mouth. Big Mouth for sure. That season 2 of Big Mouth dropped on Netflix. It's so silly. It's animated. It's about puberty and they're hormone monsters and shame wizards, and it is dirty and hilarious and just makes me laugh like nothing else.
Well, we'll end on a pseudo similar thing because mine is also an animated Netflix show, Castlevania.
Oh yeah,
It's so good. It's so well written. The second season really built on the first. It's probably one of the best video game adaptations to an actual non-video game in the history of mankind. It's so good. And the first season's only 4 episodes, and they're all like 20 minutes long, so it's really easy. And it does involve vampires.
Season, or is it just one season?
It's technically 2 seasons, but it's only like 14 total episodes.
Okay.
Because the first season is bizarrely not like an episode. It's just, it's 4 episodes. So it's sort of just like, this is our world. Here's some of the characters in it. And this is sort of the, the tone. And then it went away. And it was like a test to see, like, if we put 4 episodes out, do people like it? People loved it. And then the next season, I think it was 8 to 10. I think it was 10 episodes. But it was really good. And the nice thing about it that I'll tell people that don't like too long a commitment, well, it's clearly set up for a 3rd season. All the story elements from season 1 and 2 wrapped up. So you could technically stop and never see another episode and feel like you got a complete story.
Okay, I like that a lot. I'm bad at commitment.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like you've given me multiple things to watch. I have to watch Haunting on Hill House and Castlevania and what else? What was the other thing? Oh, iZombie.
And Veronica Mars, obviously.
You restocked my queue.
Yes.
Can I just say one more time that I am not an official spokesperson for YouTube, and sorry if I ruined any or spoiled any strategy that YouTube is going after. I didn't mean to.
I don't think so. Everything is pretty much on the surface in the world now anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It's all just my observations being a new employee and being super involved in this industry. So, I don't know. I think it's an interesting time to be part of TV.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, obviously. This was actually episode 90, which is pretty crazy that we've gone for that long.
Yeah.
I think my dad is back next week with some sports business stuff. And, go rate us on iTunes, support us on Patreon, all that wonderful stuff if you can. And thank you again to Kaley, my cousin. And we'll talk to you next week.